6 months had passed since what everyone now called the Helmet Incident. The story had spread across the entire Galactic Council network, becoming the subject of countless discussions, academic papers, and even a few comedy routines. 3 human cubs had accidentally started a revolution in how the galaxy thought about raising the young. The Kim family returned to Threshold Station for a follow-up trade negotiation. As their transport shuttle docked, they saw immediately that things had changed. The docking bay looked different, brighter, and there was noise, something that had never existed in the sterile, quiet station before. Children's laughter, Taeho and Hana exchanged surprised glances as they stepped off the shuttle. Their own 3 children pressed close, looking around with wide eyes. The docking bay had been transformed. One entire wall was now painted with colorful murals showing different alien species playing together. There were climbing structures, interactive displays set at child height, and padded areas for species that needed soft surfaces. Most surprising of all, there were juveniles everywhere. Small aliens of dozens of different species ran, crawled, floated, and hopped around the space. Adult supervisors from various worlds watched over them, but the supervision was relaxed, allowing the young ones to explore. "What is all this?" Hana asked in wonder. Vessel Mind Sharp approached them, his shell plates clicking in what they'd learned was his version of a smile. "Welcome back, Ambassador Kim. Welcome, Hana, welcome, young ones." He gestured with one of his 4 arms. "This is the Juvenile Diplomatic Zone. It was created 3 months ago following recommendations from the Council's new Committee on Developmental Relations." "You created a committee?" Taeho asked, amused. "We created several," admitted Commander Wreath of Sorrow, floating up to join them. His gaseous form was a pleasant blue color, indicating contentment. "After your children's visit, many representatives began asking questions. How do humans raise their young? Why do they allow such freedom? Does it really work better? We studied human child development extensively," Vessel Mindsharp continued, "and we found that your methods, while chaotic, produce remarkably adaptable and creative adults." A small, furry alien child ran past chasing a floating ball, nearly bumping into Doyen. The child stopped, looked up at the human boy, and made a chittering sound. Doyen chittered back, a rough approximation of the sound, and both children giggled before the alien ran off again. "The juveniles learn from each other here," explained Vessel Mind Sharp. "They experience controlled chaos, as you call it. They make small mistakes and learn from them in a safe environment." Nari tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mom, can we go play?" "In a little bit," Hana promised. Sora Baek walked up, now wearing a different uniform. "Ambassador Mrs. Kim, it's good to see you again." "Officer Baek," Taeho greeted her. "You look different." "Promoted?" "In a way," Sora smiled. "I'm now the director of the Juvenile Diplomatic Zone. Turns out, being human and understanding how kids think made me qualified for something I never expected." She led them through the zone, explaining how it worked. Different species brought their young to socialize and learn about other cultures. The supervisors were trained in multiple species' developmental needs. There were quiet areas for species that needed peace, active areas for species that needed movement, and everything in between. "The most amazing part," Sora said, "is watching them figure out how to play together. A species that communicates through color changes playing tag with a species that uses sound. They create their own rules, their own games. They're teaching us adults how to bridge cultural gaps." They passed by the ceremonial guard station. The same 3 guards who had their helmets taken stood at attention, but something was different. On each guard's chest plate there was a small symbol. Taeho looked closer and realized it was a tiny handprint, engraved carefully into the metal. "They requested the modification themselves," Vessel Mind Sharp explained. "They say it reminds them that even sacred traditions can be seen with fresh wonder." The guard that Nari had borrowed from broke his stance slightly to address her directly. "Small human Nari, I have not forgotten my promise. Would you like to learn about the helmet symbols now?" Nari's face lit up. "Really? Yes, please." The guard knelt down, bringing his helmet to her level. His voice through the translator was gentle as he explained each symbol, what it meant, why it mattered to his people. Jiho and Doyen listened too, genuinely interested. Other children, alien and human alike, gathered around to listen. What started as a lesson for one curious child became an impromptu cultural exchange, With the guard sharing stories about his species' history and traditions, the children asked questions that adults would never think to ask. Simple questions. Important questions. Why is this symbol bigger than that one? What happens if the helmet breaks? Do you ever get tired of wearing it? The guard answered each question with patience, clearly moved that anyone cared to ask. Other guards, watching from their posts, looked at each other. Perhaps they too could share their traditions with the young ones. Later, the official ceremony took place in the main council chamber. The trade agreements were signed with appropriate solemnity. But the real moment came afterwards when Commander Wreath of Sorrow made an announcement. "Today we formally recognize a new category of diplomacy," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Juvenile cultural exchange? We acknowledge that the young of any species can teach us as much as we teach them. They see the universe with fresh perspective. They question what we accept. They find wonder in what we have forgotten is wonderful." He floated toward the Kim children. "Young humans Nari, Jiho, and Doyun, you came to this station 6 months ago and accidentally taught us something profound. For your contributions to interspecies understanding, we award you junior diplomatic commendations." 3 small medals were presented, each inscribed with symbols from dozens of different species' writing systems. The children accepted them with pride, though Doyun whispered loudly, "Is this because we took the helmets?" The chamber filled with laughter, genuine and warm. After the ceremony, as the Kim family walked through the station toward their quarters, they passed dozens of families, alien parents with their offspring, some species bringing their young to the station for the first time. A clicking mother walked by with her larvae in a specialized carrier. A methane-breathing species floated past with small entities that sparkled in their energy field. "This is amazing," Hana said softly to Taiho. "They're actually changing how they think about children. All because ours took some helmets," Taiho replied with a slight smile. That evening, the Kim family had dinner in their quarters. The children told their parents everything they'd learned and seen. Nari showed them her notes about the helmet symbols. Jiho explained a game he'd learned from a species that had 6 legs. Doyen demonstrated a greeting gesture taught to him by a species with no spoken language. There was a knock at the door. When Taiho answered, he found a small group waiting. Vessel Mind Sharp, Commander Wreath of Sorrow, and Kelvin Choi, the xenobiologist. "Forgive the intrusion," the commander said. "We wish to speak with you privately." They were invited in. Once everyone was settled, Vessel Mind Sharp spoke. "Ambassador, we have a proposal. The juvenile diplomatic zone has been successful beyond our expectations. We wish to expand the program to other stations and planets throughout the Council." "That's wonderful," Taiho said, unsure why they were telling him. "We want your family to be part of it," Kelvin explained. "Not permanently, but perhaps visits to different stations, showing other species what human children are like. Demonstrating your parenting methods." Hana raised an eyebrow. "You want our kids to be examples?" "We want them to be themselves," the commander corrected. "Other species need to see that allowing children freedom within safe boundaries doesn't create chaos. It creates curiosity, creativity, and compassion." Taiho looked at his wife. She looked at their 3 children, who were listening intently. "Kids," he asked, "would you want to do something like that? Visit other places, meet other children from different worlds? Would we learn new things?" Nari asked. "Lots of new things," Kelvin promised. "Could I bring my collection of rocks?" Doyen asked. He'd started collecting mineral samples from every planet they visited. "Of course," Vessel Mind Sharp said, his antenna twitching with amusement. "Then okay," Jiho decided. His siblings nodded in agreement. As the officials left, promising to send details later, Taiho closed the door and leaned against it. He looked at Hana, then at their 3 children. "You know what's funny?" he said. "What?" Hana asked. 6 months ago, they thought our kids were a disaster. Now they want them to be ambassadors for childhood itself. Hana laughed. "That's because they finally understood what we've always known. Children aren't problems to be managed. They're people learning to be themselves. And sometimes the best way to learn is to make mistakes, apologize, and grow from it. Even if those mistakes involve stealing ceremonial helmets," Nari asked with a small grin. "Especially then," Taiho said, ruffling her hair. "You taught a whole space station to see their traditions differently. That's pretty impressive for someone who was just looking for something shiny to play with." Commander Wreath of Sorrow made a decision. They would attempt a peaceful retrieval operation. 20 trained security personnel from various species were assembled, given one simple instruction: retrieve the helmets without harming the human juveniles. The team leader was a large, bear-like creature named Mun from a species that valued strength and honor. He'd trained for combat situations and hostage negotiations. How hard could 3 small humans be? Very hard, as it turned out. The security team tracked the children to the lower maintenance level. They moved carefully through the narrow passages, their sensors detecting 3 small heat signatures ahead. Mun raised his large paw, signaling his team to spread out and surround the area. "Human juveniles," he called out in what he thought was a friendly voice. "We are not angry. Please return the helmets and you will receive a nice treat." Silence for a moment. Then Doyen's voice echoed from somewhere ahead. "What kind of treat? Progress?" Mun smiled, showing many teeth. "What would you like?" "Ice cream!" Jiho shouted from a different direction. How had they moved so fast? "We can provide ice cream," Mun agreed. "Please come out." "Okay," Nari's voice said. "Count to 20 first." Mun frowned. This seemed odd, but he was willing to try anything. "Very well. 1, 2, 3. By the count of 10, the security team realized they'd been tricked. The children had used the time to escape through a ventilation shaft that the team's larger bodies couldn't fit through. They could hear giggles echoing through the metal walls. "This is not working," Mun reported to Commander Wreath of Sorrow. "Try a different approach," the commander suggested. The security team tried everything. They offered toys. They tried to reason about responsibility. One officer attempted to explain the cultural significance of the helmets. The children listened politely to that one, but they still didn't come out. "The helmets are very important," the officer explained. "The guards need them to feel whole." "Why don't they have backup helmets?" Nari asked, genuinely curious. This was actually a good question that no one had a good answer for. The chase continued through different sections of the station. The children demonstrated abilities that shocked the security team. They climbed walls using handholds that seemed impossibly far apart. They squeezed through gaps that should have been too small. In one section with reduced gravity, they adapted within seconds, bouncing and flipping with delighted laughter while the security team struggled to adjust. "How are they so adaptable?" One officer gasped. "They're humans," another replied, as if that explained everything. And perhaps it did. Sorabayek watched the operation from the security center. She was a young human woman, recently assigned to the Council Guard as part of the new human integration program. She'd grown up on Earth and knew exactly what was happening. "You're all doing this wrong," she told her alien colleagues. Vessel Mind Sharp turned to her, his antenna twitching. "Then enlighten us, Officer Beck. How would you handle human juveniles?" "First, stop chasing them," Sora said. "You're making it fun. Human kids love being chased. It's a game to them. This is not a game." Vessel Mind Sharp's shell plates clicked together rapidly. "To them it is," Sora explained. "Look at their behavior. They're not scared. They're not trying to escape the station. They're playing. Every time you chase them, you make the game more exciting." Another security officer, a floating entity named Whisper of Dawn, drifted closer. "What do you suggest?" "Stop chasing and they'll get bored," Sora said simply. "Kids that age have short attention spans. Once the game isn't fun anymore, they'll move on to something else." The team tried Sora's approach. They pulled back, stopped pursuing, and waited. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then Jiho appeared around a corner, still wearing his helmet. "Why'd you stop playing?" he asked, sounding disappointed. "We're tired," Moon said, sitting down heavily. "Chasing is hard work." Jiho considered this. Then he noticed something interesting in an open doorway. It was a room full of holographic displays showing star maps. His attention immediately shifted. "What's that?" "That's navigation," Whisper of Dawn said. "Would you like to see?" "Yeah." Jiho ran toward the room, temporarily forgetting about the game. The security team looked at each other. This might actually work, but just as they thought they were making progress, Doyen's helmet activated something new. The 4-year-old had been playing with the controls and accidentally triggered a security scan. The helmet's advanced sensors swept through the nearby walls, detecting anomalies in the station's structure. Behind a false panel in a storage room, the scan revealed something that wasn't supposed to be there. Crates. Many crates. And the contents were flagged as illegal contraband. "Uh-oh," Doyen said, not understanding what he'd found. but the helmet's security protocol automatically sent the data to the station's main system. Within seconds, alarms blared in the security center. Vessel Mindsharp stared at the incoming data with his compound eyes wide. "There's a smuggling operation," he said in disbelief, "in Storage Bay 7. The scan came from one of the stolen helmets." Commander Wreath of Sorrow's gaseous form shifted to a bright orange color, indicating extreme surprise. "The human juvenile found this?" "By accident, it appears," Vessel Mindsharp confirmed. "But the evidence is clear. We have criminals on this station." The entire security team's priority shifted immediately. Smuggling was a serious crime. The team that had been chasing children was now rushing toward Storage Bay 7 to apprehend actual criminals. Sora Beck couldn't help but laugh. "Those kids just solved a crime while playing dress-up." In Storage Bay 7, a group of suspicious individuals realized they'd been discovered. They tried to escape but ran directly into the waiting security team. The arrest was swift and efficient. 3 different species were involved in the smuggling ring, dealing in illegal tech and banned substances. During the commotion, the 3 Kim children had wandered to the station's observation deck. They stood at the large windows, helmets still on their heads, watching the stars. "I'm hungry," Doyen announced. "Me too," Jiho agreed. Nari checked the time display in her helmet. "It's past lunchtime. Mom's probably made sandwiches." The twins' eyes lit up. Their mother made really good sandwiches. "Should we go back?" Jiho asked. "Yeah," Nari decided. "But we should probably return these first." She touched the helmet on her head. "They're cool, but they're not ours. Will we get in trouble?" Doyen worried. "Probably," Nari said honestly. "But not too much trouble if we apologize." The 3 children headed back toward the diplomatic wing, no longer running or hiding. The game had run its course. They were hungry, tired, and ready to go back to their parents. In the security center, an officer reported, "Sir, the human juveniles are heading back toward their family quarters. Should we intercept them?" Another asked. Vessel Mindsharp was still processing everything that had happened. His guards were incapacitated. The station had been in chaos, but the children had also accidentally uncovered a major criminal operation. He didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. "Let them go," Commander Wreath of Sorrow said. "I believe the ambassador's wife is better equipped to handle them than our entire security force." It was a humbling admission, but after the last 2 hours, no one could argue with it. The emergency council meeting was called within 15 minutes. The main conference chamber filled with representatives from dozens of species, all chattering in various languages through translator devices. At the center of the room floated Commander Wreath of Sorrow, the station's highest authority. His species had no solid form, existing as a cloud of gas held together by an energy field. When he spoke, his voice echoed from every direction. "Explain the situation," he said to Vessel Mindsharp. The security chief stood rigid with stress. His shell plates clicked together rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. 3 human juveniles have taken ceremonial helmets from my honor guard. The guards cannot function without them. The helmets contain neural interfaces connected directly to their biology. Without them, the guards experience pain and disorientation. A reptilian diplomat named Vess leaned forward. "Why not simply take the helmets back?" "The juveniles have diplomatic immunity," Vessel Mindsharp explained. "We cannot use force. Human law is very strict about harming their young." "Then have the parents retrieve them," suggested another voice. "I contacted Ambassador Kim," the security chief said, his tone showing disbelief. "He said they will return the helmets eventually. He refuses to take immediate action." The room erupted in confused chatter. Several diplomats had met humans before, but none understood this response. How could a parent be so casual about their offspring causing an international incident? Commander Wreath of Sorrow's gaseous form shifted colors from blue to purple. This indicated deep thought. Perhaps we do not understand human juvenile behavior. "Is there an expert present?" From the back of the room, a thin man in a gray uniform stood up. This was Kelvin Choi, a xenobiologist who specialized in studying how different species raised their young. He was human himself, though he'd spent years living among aliens. "I can offer some perspective," Kelvin said, walking to the center of the room, "but you might not like what I have to say." "Speak," the commander ordered. Kelvin pulled up a holographic display showing images of human children. Human juveniles are unique in the galaxy. They're born more helpless than almost any other species, unable to walk or feed themselves for months. But as they grow, they become incredibly resilient and adaptive. This does not explain the theft, Vessel Mindsharp interrupted. I'm getting to that, Kelvin said patiently. Human children have extremely powerful curiosity drives. It's how they learn. When they see something interesting, their instinct is to touch it, take it, explore it. This behavior is not considered wrong in human culture unless the child intends harm. Vess made a hissing sound. They have harmed the guards by taking their helmets. From the children's perspective, they borrowed something shiny and interesting, Kelvin explained. They probably don't understand the significance. They're 4 and 6 years old. At that age, humans are still learning basic concepts about property and consequences. Commander Wreath of Sorrow drifted closer. You are saying the juveniles are ignorant? I'm saying they're children, Kelvin replied. And human parents don't expect perfection from children. They expect mistakes. The parents use these mistakes as teaching opportunities. This concept seemed to baffle the assembled aliens. A delegate whose species laid eggs that hatched fully educated spoke up. Your young are allowed to make mistakes that cause problems for others? Within limits, yes, Kelvin confirmed. Humans believe that overprotecting children makes them weak, so they allow controlled chaos. The key word is controlled. Ambassador Kim isn't worried because he knows his children aren't dangerous. They're just curious. Vessel Mindsharp's entire body vibrated with frustration. My guards are suffering. This is not acceptable. I agree, said the commander. But we must handle this carefully. We cannot risk harming the human juveniles or insulting the human delegation. Our treaty with humanity is too important. While the council argued, the 3 Kim children were having the time of their lives. They discovered that the helmets did more than just look pretty. When Nari put hers on properly, it connected with her nervous system in a gentle way, showing her a heads-up display of information. Whoa, she breathed, seeing a map of the entire station appear before her eyes. This is amazing. Jiho's helmet had activated a translation program. Suddenly, he could understand the alien languages being spoken through the station's communication system. He heard security teams talking about the human juveniles and containment protocols. I think they're looking for us, he told his sister. We should hide, Doyen suggested. His helmet had accidentally activated an emergency broadcast function, but he hadn't figured that out yet. The 3 children ran through corridors, their small size allowing them to slip into spaces the aliens couldn't follow. They crawled through maintenance passages, giggled in storage rooms, and explored areas of the station that most visitors never saw. Back in the diplomatic quarters, Hana sat reading a book on her datapad. She sipped tea calmly while Taiho reviewed trade agreements. His communicator kept buzzing with urgent messages, but he'd muted it. Shouldn't you check those? Hana asked without looking up. They'll figure it out, Taiho said. The kids aren't in danger. How do you know? Because if they were in actual danger, Nari would have come back already. She's smart enough to know when a game has gone too far. Hana smiled slightly. That's true, there was a knock at the door. Taiho opened it to find Vess, the reptilian diplomat, standing with 2 security officers. Ambassador Kim, Vess said formally. I must speak with you about your offspring. Come in, Taiho gestured. Vess entered but remained standing, his tail swishing with agitation. With respect, Ambassador, the Council does not understand your reaction to this crisis. Your juveniles have caused significant disruption. 3 honor guards are unable to perform their duties. The security chief is considering this a breach of sacred tradition. Yet you seem unconcerned. Taiho nodded. I understand why it looks that way. But I know my children. They're not trying to cause harm. They saw something interesting and acted on their curiosity. Yes, they should have asked first. Yes, they'll be disciplined later. But right now they're learning about consequences in real time. They are learning? Vess's translator couldn't quite convey his confusion. This is educational? Everything is educational for human children, Hana said from her seat. They learn by doing. Sometimes that means doing the wrong thing and discovering why it was wrong. But the guards will get their helmets back, Taiho interrupted gently. The kids are probably getting tired or bored by now. When children that age play a game, they eventually want to move on to something else. The helmets will stop being interesting soon. Vess stared at the human ambassador for a long moment. Your species raises offspring in a very strange way. Maybe, Taiho agreed. but it works for us. At that moment, Doyen's voice suddenly echoed through every speaker in the station. The 4-year-old had accidentally activated the emergency broadcast system. Hello? Hello, is this thing on? I'm a space captain. Jiho, stop pushing me. Nari, how do I turn this off? Throughout the station, every being stopped and listened to the small human voice. Some found it amusing. Others found it horrifying. Vessel Mindsharp nearly fainted from stress. Tiho sighed. Okay, that one they probably shouldn't have figured out. Hana finally looked up from her book. Want me to go get them? Not yet, Taiho said. Let's see how the station handles it first. Vess looked between the two human parents, completely baffled by their calm demeanor during what the rest of the station considered an unfolding disaster. The space station floated in orbit around Threshold 7, a planet that belonged to no one. Inside the massive metal structure, beings from 100 different worlds walked through corridors of silver and blue light. Today was special. Today, humans would sign their first major agreement with the Galactic Council. Ambassador Taeho Kim stepped off the transport shuttle with his family. He wore a formal black suit that looked simple compared to the flowing robes and glittering armor of other diplomats. Behind him, his wife Hana carried a small bag over her shoulder. She looked calm and unbothered by the dozens of alien eyes watching them arrive. Their 3 children came last. Nari was 6 years old with her hair tied back in a ponytail. She held the hands of her 4-year-old twin brothers, Jiho and Doyen. The boys looked identical, both wearing matching blue jackets that their mother had picked out that morning. Remember what we talked about, Hana said quietly to the children. This is an important place. Stay close. Yes, Mom, Nari said. The twins nodded, their eyes already wandering to the strange sights around them. The greeting party waited at the end of the docking bay. Leading them was Vessel Mindsharp, the station's security chief. He was tall and thin, with a body covered in hard shell plates that clicked when he moved. His species, the clicking, took protocol and tradition very seriously. Behind him stood his honor guard, 6 warriors wearing ceremonial helmets that covered their entire heads. The helmets were beautiful, made of some metal that shifted colors in the light, decorated with symbols that glowed softly. Ambassador Kim, Vessel Mindsharp said through his translator device. His real voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Welcome to Threshold Station. We are honored by your presence. Taiho bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. Thank you, Security Chief. We're grateful for your hospitality. Vessel Mindsharp's antenna twitched. His large compound eyes focused on the 3 small humans. These are juveniles. Our children, yes, Taiho said with a smile. Nari, Jiho, and Doyun. I see. The security chief seemed uncomfortable. We were not informed that juveniles would attend the ceremony. They're well behaved, Hana added, though her tone suggested she didn't really care what he thought. The security chief decided not to argue. He gestured with one of his 4 arms. Please follow me to the diplomatic wing. The signing ceremony begins in 2 hours. The group moved through the station. The corridors were wide and tall, built to accommodate species of all sizes. Strange music played from hidden speakers, sounds that no human instrument could make. The Kim family passed aliens that floated, crawled, and walked on anywhere from 2 to 8 legs. Jiho tugged on his father's sleeve. Dad, what are those? He pointed at the honor guards walking beside them. Those are ceremonial guards, Taeho explained. The helmets they wear are very special and important to their culture. They're shiny, Doyen whispered to his brother. The guards walked with perfect coordination, their movements synchronized. The helmets they wore weren't just for show. According to the briefing Taiho had read, these helmets connected directly to the clicking nervous system. Wearing them was both a religious practice and a practical necessity for the honor guard to function. Removing them during duty was unthinkable. They reached the diplomatic wing, where families were given quarters to rest before the ceremony. Vessel Mindsharp explained the schedule, pointed out the facilities, and reminded them 3 times about the importance of respecting station protocols. We understand, Taiho assured him. We'll be ready in time. The security chief and his guards left, their footsteps clicking away down the corridor. Hana set down her bag and looked around the room. It was clean and comfortable, with furniture that adjusted to human proportions. Not bad, she said. Kids, stay in this area. Your father and I need to review some documents. Can we look around? Nari asked. Stay on this floor, Taiho said, already pulling up holographic files. Don't go into any rooms marked with red symbols. Okay, Dad. The children left the quarters and walked into the corridor. Everything was new and exciting. Nari led her brothers past windows that showed the planet below and the stars beyond. They saw a floating jellyfish creature drift by, and a robot that spoke in musical tones. Look at that, Jiho said, pointing ahead. The honor guards stood at attention near the entrance to the ceremony hall. Their helmets caught the light, creating small rainbows on the walls. No one else was in this section of the corridor at the moment. I want to see it up close, Doyen said. Nari knew they shouldn't bother the guards, but she was curious too. The three children walked closer, staring up at the tall alien standing perfectly still. Hello, Nari said politely. The guards didn't respond. They weren't supposed to break their stance. Jiho reached up, his small hand touching the leg of one guard. The alien twitched slightly but didn't move. The twins giggled. To them, the guards were like statues, like a game. What happened next would be debated for months. Some claimed the children were impossibly fast. Others said the guards were careless. Security footage would show something that seemed simple but was actually quite complex. Doyen noticed that one helmet sat slightly loose on its guard. He was a 4-year-old human child, which meant he was curious, quick, and had no concept of sacred traditions. He jumped, grabbed the edge of the helmet, and pulled. The helmet came off. The guard froze completely, making a high-pitched whistling sound. His body locked up, antenna going rigid. Cool, Doyen said, putting the helmet on his own small head. It was far too big, falling over his eyes. Doyen, Nari gasped, but she was laughing. It looked funny. Jiho wanted one too. Before anyone could stop him, he climbed onto a decorative ledge and grabbed another helmet from a second guard. That guard also froze, trembling and clicking frantically. Guys, we shouldn't, Nari started to say, but a third guard's helmet caught her eye. It had the prettiest designs. Before she knew what she was doing, her curiosity won. She was taller than the twins and didn't need to jump. She simply reached up, lifted the helmet carefully, and placed it on her own head. 3 guards stood frozen and twitching. 3 human children wore sacred ceremonial helmets. And then Nari said the words that would start everything. Run! They're gonna be mad. The children took off down the corridor, laughing and wearing helmets that glowed and hummed with active technology. Behind them, the 3 guards collapsed to their knees, unable to function without their neural connections. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. In the diplomatic quarters, Taiho's communication device buzzed urgently. He picked it up to hear Vessel Mindsharp's panicked voice. Ambassador Kim, your juveniles have stolen sacred ceremonial helmets from my honor guard. This is a crisis of the highest order. You must retrieve them immediately. Taiho glanced at Hana, who raised an eyebrow. He sighed and took a sip of his coffee before responding. They'll give them back eventually, he said calmly. Through the communicator, he could hear Vessel Mindsharp's antenna snapping in distress. The 3 children walked through the corridor toward their family quarters, their stomachs rumbling. They still wore the helmets, which had stopped feeling special and now just felt heavy. When they reached the door, it slid open automatically. Hana stood in the small kitchen area arranging sandwiches on plates. She looked up at her 3 children wearing glowing alien helmets that were far too big for their heads. She didn't look angry. She didn't look surprised. She just looked like their mom. Wash your hands, she said simply. Lunch is ready. The children scrambled to obey, carefully taking off the helmets and setting them on a table before running to the bathroom. When they returned, Hana had set out their favorite sandwiches, cut into triangles the way they liked with juice boxes and sliced fruit. They ate quickly, hunger winning over everything else. Hana sat with them, eating her own lunch calmly. After a few minutes, she spoke in a conversational tone. So you borrowed some helmets from the guards. It wasn't a question. Nari swallowed her bite of sandwich. We didn't think they'd mind. Did you ask them first? Hana inquired. No, Nari admitted quietly. And that's the problem, Hana said, but her voice wasn't harsh. When something belongs to someone else, we always ask before we take it. Even if we plan to give it back. We were going to give them back, Jiho said quickly. I know you were, Hana replied. But the guards didn't know that. They were probably worried and confused. Doyen looked down at his plate. Are we in big trouble? Hana considered this. You made a mistake. Mistakes have consequences. But you weren't trying to hurt anyone, were you? No, All three children said together. Then here's what we're going to do, Hana said. You're going to return the helmets personally. You're going to apologize to each guard. And you're going to mean it. After that, we'll talk about appropriate punishment later. Okay, Nari agreed. Her brothers nodded. But first, finish your lunch, Hana added. No one makes good decisions on an empty stomach. Outside the diplomatic quarters, a crowd had formed. Word had spread through the station about the human juveniles and their adventure. Dozens of beings from different species waited to see what would happen next. Some expected the children to be punished severely. Others were simply curious about these small humans who had caused so much chaos. Vessel Mind Sharp stood with his three guards, who were still suffering without their helmets. The guards trembled and clicked, their biology struggling with the disconnect. Medical staff had done what they could, but nothing could truly help except returning the helmets. Ambassador Taiho emerged from the quarters first. He'd been receiving reports about everything that had happened, including the discovery of the smuggling ring. He walked to where Vessel Mind Sharp waited. Security Chief, he said formally, I understand my children caused considerable trouble today. That is an understatement, Vessel Mind Sharp replied, his translator struggling to convey his complex emotions. They also helped you catch criminals, Taiho pointed out. By accident, the security chief countered. Does it matter? Taiho asked. Good results from clumsy methods are still good results. Before Vessel Mind Sharp could respond, the door opened again. Hana emerged with the three children. Each child carefully carried one of the ceremonial helmets with both hands, treating them with respect now. The crowd fell silent, watching. Nari walked up to the first guard, the one she'd taken the helmet from. She had to tilt her head way back to look up at his face, even though he was hunched over in distress. She held up the helmet. I'm sorry I took this without asking, she said clearly. It was wrong. I should have asked first. The helmet is really beautiful and special. Thank you for letting me see it. The guard took the helmet with shaking hands and immediately placed it on his head. The connection re-established instantly. He straightened up, his body relaxing as the neural link restored. For a moment he just stood there recovering. Then he did something unexpected. He bowed to Nari. Through his translator he spoke. Thank you, small human. In 400 cycles of service, no one has asked me about my helmet's meaning. You saw wonder in it. That is a gift. Jiho and Doyun followed their sister's example, each apologizing to their respective guards and returning the helmets. Each guard received their helmet with visible relief, and each guard bowed to the child who returned it. The crowd murmured in surprise. This wasn't the response they'd expected. Vessel Mind Sharp stepped forward. His antenna twitched in what those who knew his species recognized as emotional confusion. Juveniles, he said formally. You have caused great disruption today. The children looked worried. However, he continued, you have also shown us something important. You looked at our traditions with fresh eyes. You found them fascinating rather than simply accepting them. And though your methods were inappropriate, your curiosity was genuine. He paused, then added, and you did help us discover criminals on our station. For that, the Council extends gratitude. Commander Wreath of Sorrow's gaseous form floated into view. He had been watching everything from a distance. Ambassador Kim, he said, your offspring are remarkably interesting beings. They're children, Taiho said with a slight smile. This is what children do. They explore, they make mistakes, they learn. Other species' juveniles do not behave this way, the commander observed. Perhaps they should, Hana said quietly, but everyone heard her. Our children learn by doing. Sometimes they do the wrong thing, but they learn from it faster than they would from just being told what not to do. Sora Beck, who had been watching from the edge of the crowd, stepped forward. Commander, if I may speak? Please, the commander gestured. I grew up as a human child, Sora said. I climbed things I shouldn't have climbed. I touched things I shouldn't have touched. I asked questions that annoyed adults. But each time I learned something. Not just about what I did wrong, but about the world around me. Human parents don't try to prevent all mistakes. They try to prevent dangerous mistakes and let their children learn from safe mistakes. And taking sacred helmets was considered safe? Vessel Mind Sharp asked, his voice showing disbelief. The children weren't in danger, Taiho explained. They weren't going to hurt themselves or anyone else. Yes, it was disrespectful. Yes, they needed to learn that lesson. But they learned it by experiencing the consequences, not by being told about theoretical consequences. Nari raised her hand like she was in school. Excuse me? Everyone looked at the 6-year-old. I learned something today, she said. I learned that just because something is interesting doesn't mean I can take it. I learned that things that look like toys might be really important to other people. And I learned that your guards have really cool traditions that mean a lot to them. She turned to the guard she'd borrowed from. Can you tell me more about the symbols on your helmet sometime? I really want to know what they mean. The guard's translator took a moment to process his response. When it came, his voice was softer than before. I would be honored to share this knowledge, small human. You are the first to ask in my lifetime of service. The crowd's mood shifted. What had seemed like a disaster was turning into something else. Something strange and new. A small, furry alien approached Hana timidly. Human parent, she said through her translator. I have offspring. They are kept in education pods, learning through information transfer. Is that wrong? It's not wrong if it works for your species, Hana replied gently. But for humans, children need to touch and explore and yes, sometimes cause trouble. That's how they understand the world. More aliens began asking questions. How do you teach without controlling? How do you allow freedom without chaos? How do you trust beings that are still learning? Taiho and Hana found themselves at the center of an impromptu discussion about child rearing across species. The signing ceremony was forgotten for the moment. Something more important was happening.